Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Haunting of Arreton Manor. The night was dark, moonlight suffused through the clouds, casting ghostly shadows over the ancient stone walls of Arreton Manor. Holly Arnold stood at the entrance, clutching the old iron key she had just received. The manor, a sprawling estate on the Isle of Wight, had been in her family for centuries, passed down through generations. Now it was hers an inheritance she hadn't known existed until the lawyer's letter arrived, summoning her to claim her legacy. She had been living a quiet life in London, working a mundane job, with no knowledge of her family's history. The idea of inheriting a grand estate had seemed romantic at first, a welcome escape from her life of monotony. But as she stood before the manor, an ominous feeling crept over her. The manor loomed large, its towering structure shrouded in an unsettling silence, as if the land itself held its breath. The lawyer, a stooped old man with a wrinkled face, had warned her. Arreton Manor has a history, Miss Arnold. It's not just a home, it's a place where the past lingers. Holly had dismissed his words as superstitious nonsense, a relic of old island folklore. But now, with the key cold in her hand and the manor before her, she began to wonder if there was some truth to the old man's warnings. The front door creaked open with a groan, as if protesting her arrival. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. Dust hung in the air, swirling in the faint light that filtered through the dirty windows. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath her feet as she explored the ground floor. She wandered through the grand hall, the walls lined with portraits of her ancestors, their eyes following her every move. Holly shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her. She reached the drawing room, where a large fireplace dominated the space. An ancient, threadbare rug lay before it, and above the mantelpiece, a particularly stern-looking portrait of a woman stared down at her. The brass plaque beneath it read, ** Elizabeth Arnold, Lady of Arreton, 1670–1720*. Holly could not tear her eyes away from Elizabeth's cold gaze. The longer she stared, the more she felt an inexplicable connection to the woman, a sense of familiarity, as if Elizabeth knew her, as if she were still watching from beyond the grave. She turned away, uncomfortable under the weight of that stare, and continued her exploration. The rest of the manor was much the same, dust-covered, neglected, and filled with an eerie stillness. Every room seemed to whisper secrets she couldn't quite hear. She was about to ascend the grand staircase when she heard a faint, echoing laughter. It was distant, barely audible, but unmistakable. Holly froze, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hello," she called out. The laughter came again, this time louder, closer. It was the laughter of a child, joyful, yet tinged with something sinister. Holly's breath quickened, and she backed away from the staircase, her eyes darting around the hall. She knew she was alone. She had checked every room, every corner. But the laughter persisted, growing louder, more persistent. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut behind her with a deafening bang. Holly whirled around, her heart in her throat. The door had been wide open when she entered, but now it was sealed tight, as if the manor had decided to trap her inside. She ran to the door, fumbling with the key, but the lock wouldn't budge. Panic set in. She was trapped in this old, decaying manor with no way out. The laughter echoed through the halls, and now she could hear footsteps light, running, like those of a child at play. But there were no children here, only the ghosts of those who had once lived within these walls. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Had the old lawyer been right? Was this place truly haunted? Holly didn't believe in ghosts, at least. She hadn't until now. But as the laughter and footsteps grew louder, she could no longer deny that something was terribly wrong. She retreated into the drawing room, shutting the door behind her. The room felt slightly safer, less exposed, though she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She sat down on the old, worn sofa, trying to calm her racing heart. Perhaps she was imagining things, perhaps the stress of inheriting the manor was getting to her. She needed to think clearly, to figure out a way out of this nightmare. But then the laughter stopped. The sudden silence was even more terrifying than the noise had been. It was as if the entire manor was holding its breath, waiting for something. Holly sat still, straining her ears, but all she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. Then, slowly, the temperature in the room began to drop. The air grew colder, chilling her to the bone. Her breath came out in visible puffs, and frost began to creep along the edges of the windows. Holly wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep warm, but the cold was relentless, seeping into her very bones. And then she saw a figure, barely visible in the dim light, standing in the corner of the room. It was a child, a little girl with long, dark hair and a white dress. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were wide, unblinking. Holly's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. The girl stared at her, her expression unreadable, and then she smiled, a slow, eerie smile that sent shivers down Holly's spine. Holly managed to whisper, her voice trembling. The girl tilted her head, as if considering the question. Then she took a step forward, and another, until she was standing right in front of Holly. She reached out a hand, her fingers icy cold, and touched Holly's cheek. "I'm Emily," the girl said, her voice soft. "I used to live here." Holly swallowed hard. This couldn't be real, ghosts weren't real. But Emily's touch was cold and solid, and her eyes were filled with something ancient, something that had seen far too much. Holly asked, her voice barely audible. Emily's smile faded, replaced by a look of sadness. "We can't leave. None of us can leave." "What do you mean?" "She won't let us. She keeps us here." Holly followed the girl's gaze to the portrait. Elizabeth Arnold's eyes, which had once been mere paint on canvas, now seemed alive, watching them with a malevolent intensity. The air in the room grew heavier, the sense of oppression almost unbearable. "She's the one," Emily continued. "She cursed us all, trapped us here. We're her prisoners." This was madness impossible. And yet the evidence was all around her, the cold touch of the girl's hand, the eerie atmosphere of the manor. She was beginning to understand the true nature of her inheritance. This was not just a manor, it was a prison, and she was the latest in a long line of captives. "No," Holly said. "There has to be a way out. There has to be a way to break the curse." Emily looked at her. Maybe. But no one has ever found it." Holly took a deep breath. She wasn't going to let herself be trapped here, not by some vengeful spirit. She would find a way out, she had to. But first she needed answers. "Tell me everything," Holly said. Who was Elizabeth Arnold? Why did she curse this place? Emily hesitated. Elizabeth was the last true lady of Arreton. She was beautiful, powerful, and ruthless. She ruled the manor with an iron fist, and she didn't tolerate disobedience, but she was also feared. People whispered that she practiced dark magic, that she had made a pact with something evil. Holly listened. The old stories she had heard from the lawyer were beginning to make sense now, the tales of witchcraft and vengeance. But what could have driven Elizabeth to curse her own home, to trap the souls of those who lived here? Elizabeth had a daughter, Emily continued. A little girl named Charlotte. She was sweet and kind, everything her mother was not, but Elizabeth was obsessed with power, with keeping her family's legacy alive. She wanted Charlotte to follow in her footsteps, to become as powerful and feared as she was. Emily paused, and Holly could see the pain in her eyes. "But Charlotte didn't want that," Emily said. "She wanted to be free. She begged her mother to let her go, to let her leave the manor." Emily's voice trembled as she continued, but Elizabeth wouldn't allow it. She believed that Charlotte's defiance was a betrayal, an insult to their family's legacy. In a fit of rage, Elizabeth performed a dark ritual, binding Charlotte's soul to the manor forever. But something went wrong. The ritual backfired, and instead of just trapping Charlotte, it ensnared all who lived within these walls, servants, guests, even Elizabeth herself. None could leave. Death became meaningless here. It only meant an eternity trapped within the manor's grasp. Holly felt a chill run down her spine. The weight of centuries of torment hung heavy in the air. "So you're all stuck here, forever?" Emily nodded sadly. "We've been here for so long, waiting, hoping for someone to set us free, but no one has ever come. Until you." "Me?" Holly asked, surprised. "Why me?" "Because you are her blood," Emily replied, her eyes flickering with a glimmer of hope. You carry the same lineage, the same power. Perhaps you can undo what she has done." Holly looked back at the portrait of Elizabeth Arnold, her painted eyes still seeming to bore into her soul. The idea of sharing any connection with such a cruel woman made her skin crawl. But if what Emily said was true, then maybe she did have a chance to help these trapped souls and herself. "Do you know how I can break the curse?" Holly asked, turning back to Emily. The little girl shook her head. "I don't know the specifics, but there are those here who might. Some have been studying, searching for answers over the centuries. Maybe they can help." Holly took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Then take me to them. I want to help." Emily's face lit up with a small, hopeful smile. She extended her hand, and Holly hesitated for a moment before taking it. The girl's touch was cold, but solid, grounding her amidst the swirling fear and uncertainty. They left the drawing room, venturing deeper into the manor. The hallways seemed darker now, the shadows longer and more menacing. As they walked, Holly could feel unseen eyes watching her, whispers echoing faintly around them. "Who else is here?" Holly asked quietly. "Many," Emily replied. "But not all are friendly. Some have succumbed to the darkness, become twisted by their endless imprisonment." Holly's grip on Emily's hand tightened. "Are we in danger? Stay close to me," Emily said reassuringly. "They won't harm you as long as you're with me." They descended a narrow staircase that led to the lower levels of the manor. The air grew colder and more stagnant, and Holly could smell the mustiness of long-forgotten rooms. They reached a heavy wooden door, its surface etched with strange symbols and patterns. "Here," Emily said, pushing the door open with surprising ease. Inside was a large chamber lined with shelves filled with ancient books and scrolls. Candles flickered on various surfaces, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the coldness of the rest of the manor. At the center of the room stood a massive oak table strewn with open tomes and scattered papers. An elderly man looked up from the table as they entered. His form was translucent like Emily's, but his presence was commanding. He wore outdated but elegant clothing, and his eyes held a sharp intelligence. "Emily, who have you brought us?" he asked, his voice deep and resonant. "This is Holly," Emily replied, guiding Holly forward. "She's the new owner of the manor, Elizabeth's descendant." The man's eyes widened slightly, and he regarded Holly with keen interest. "At last," he murmured. "We've waited so long." Holly swallowed nervously. "Emily said you might know how to break the curse." He nodded slowly, gesturing for her to come closer. "I am Thomas Whitaker, once the steward of Arreton Manor. Since our entrapment, I have dedicated myself to studying Elizabeth's magic, searching for a way to undo her evil. Have you found anything?" Holly asked, hope threading through her voice. Thomas sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "Bits and pieces. Elizabeth's magic was powerful and dark, rooted in ancient rituals and blood sacrifices. To break the curse, we need to perform a counter-ritual, one that requires items of significant power and a direct bloodline connection which you provide." "What kind of items?" Holly asked, eager to help. 4 artifacts, Thomas replied, raising 4 fingers, each representing an element: earth, air, fire, and water. Elizabeth used corrupted versions of these in her ritual. We need to find their pure counterparts hidden within the manor and use them to cleanse the darkness she wrought. Holly nodded, determination building within her. "Then let's find them." Thomas's lips curved into a small smile. "It's not that simple, I'm afraid. The artifacts have been scattered throughout the manor, hidden and guarded by the darker spirits Elizabeth controls. Retrieving them will be dangerous. I'm willing to try," Holly insisted. "I can't stay trapped here forever, and neither should any of you." Emily's eyes shone with gratitude, and Thomas's expression softened. "Very well," he said. "We must act quickly. The longer you stay, the more vulnerable you become to Elizabeth's influence. Where do we start?" Holly asked. Thomas moved to one of the shelves, pulling out an old, leather-bound book. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for: a detailed drawing of a small, ornate box adorned with intricate carvings. "The earth artifact is known as the Hearthstone," he explained, pointing to the illustration. "It's said to be hidden in the manor's gardens, buried beneath the old oak tree." Holly recalled passing by a massive, ancient oak when she first arrived. Its gnarled branches had seemed almost alive, reaching toward the sky in silent supplication. I know where that is, she said. Thomas nodded. But be warned, the garden is not safe after dark. Elizabeth's influence is strong there. You must be cautious. Holly squared her shoulders. I'll go now. The sooner we start, the sooner we can end this. Emily stepped forward. I'll go with you. Thomas hesitated. Be careful, both of you. I'll prepare for the ritual here and search for clues about the other artifacts. Holly and Emily left the chamber, retracing their steps back up the staircase. As they walked through the manor's corridors, the atmosphere seemed to grow heavier, the shadows darker. Distant whispers echoed through the halls, and Holly couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. They reached the back entrance that led to the gardens. The door groaned as Holly pushed it open, revealing the sprawling, overgrown grounds bathed in the pale light of the moon. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The garden, once undoubtedly beautiful, was now wild and untamed. Vines crawled over broken statues, and weeds choked the stone pathways. In the center stood the old oak tree, its silhouette dark and imposing against the night sky. As they approached, Holly felt a strange energy emanating from the tree. The ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with life, and the air hummed with an unseen force. Here, Emily said softly, stopping a few feet from the tree. The heartstone is buried at its roots. Holly looked around, searching for any sign of disturbance or marker, but the ground was covered in a thick layer of leaves and tangled roots. Do we need tools to dig? She asked. Before Emily could answer, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the garden, rustling the leaves and making the branches above creak ominously. The temperature dropped sharply, and Holly shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her. She's here, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. A low, chilling laugh echoed through the garden, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Holly's heart raced as she spun around, searching for the source. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in flowing black garments. Her face was pale and beautiful, framed by dark hair that cascaded down her back. Her eyes gleamed with a cold, unearthly light, and her lips curved into a cruel smile. Well, well, the woman purred, her voice smooth and sinister. What have we here? My dear descendant has finally come home. Elizabeth, Holly breathed, recognizing her from the portrait. Elizabeth glided closer, her movements fluid and graceful. I must say, I didn't expect you to be so proactive. Most of your predecessors simply succumbed to their fate. I'm not like them, Holly replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. Elizabeth's smile widened. So I see, but your efforts are futile, child. This place, these souls, they all belong to me, and soon, so will you. Why are you doing this? Holly demanded, anger flaring within her. Why condemn all these people, your own family, to this eternal prison? Elizabeth's eyes flashed with irritation. You wouldn't understand. Power requires sacrifice. Legacy demands control. I built this family, this manor, with my own hands and blood. I will not let it crumble because of weak-willed descendants who lack vision. That's not power, that's cruelty, Holly shot back. Elizabeth's expression darkened, and the wind around them intensified, whipping through the trees and stirring the dead leaves into a frenzy. Mind your tongue, girl, she hissed. You are in my domain now. Holly stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. Not for long. I will break your curse and free everyone you've trapped here. Elizabeth threw her head back and laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent shivers down Holly's spine. You are welcome to try it, she taunted. But know this, the more you resist, the stronger I become. Your defiance feeds me. As she spoke, shadowy figures began to materialize around them, their forms twisted and grotesque. They closed in slowly, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Emily clung to Holly's side, her voice shaking. We have to get the heartstone now. Holly nodded, dropping to her knees and frantically digging through the soil with her hands. The earth was cold and hard, resisting her efforts as if under Elizabeth's control. Elizabeth watched with amusement, hovering above them like a dark spectre. Dig all you like, but you won't find what you're looking for. The heartstone is mine, hidden beyond your reach. Holly ignored her, focusing all her energy on clawing through the dirt. Her fingers were numb and dirty, nails breaking as she scraped deeper. Suddenly, she felt something solid beneath her fingertips, a smooth, cool surface. I've got it, she exclaimed, wrapping her fingers around the object and pulling it free. She held up a small, intricately carved stone that glowed with a soft, earthy light. The moment it emerged from the ground, a wave of warmth surged through her, pushing back the cold and darkness. Elizabeth's face twisted into a mask of rage. "No, that's impossible." Holly rose to her feet, clutching the hard stone tightly. The shadows around them recoiled, hissing as the stone's light intensified. "Leave now," Holly commanded, her voice strong and unwavering. "Your hold over this place is weakening." Elizabeth snarled, her composure slipping. "This isn't over," she spat. "You may have the stone, but you will never gather the others. I will see to that." With a final, furious glare, Elizabeth's form dissipated into the night, taking the shadowy creatures with her. The wind died down, and the garden fell silent once more. Holly let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, her body trembling from the adrenaline and fear. Emily looked up at her with awe and relief. "You did it," the little girl said, her eyes shining. Holly managed a shaky smile. 1 down, 3 to go. They made their way back into the manor, the Hearthstone's gentle glow lighting their path. As they walked through the corridors, the oppressive atmosphere seemed lighter, the shadows less menacing. When they returned to Thomas's chamber, he looked up with surprise and joy upon seeing the artifact in Holly's hands. "You succeeded," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Elizabeth tried to stop us," Holly replied, handing the Hearthstone to him. But the stone seemed to repel her. Thomas examined the artifact carefully, nodding approvingly. "This is a good sign. With each artifact we reclaim, her power will diminish, and ours will grow. What's next?" Holly asked, eager to continue. Thomas set the Hearthstone reverently on the table. "The next artifact is the air element, an object known as the Whispering Locket. It is said to be hidden in the manor's attic, among the relics of the past." Holly's stomach tightened at the thought of venturing into the attic. If horror movies had taught her anything, it was that attics were seldom safe places. "Are there dangers up there?" she asked cautiously. Thomas's expression grew serious. "The attic is home to restless spirits, those driven mad by their entrapment. They do not take kindly to intruders." Holly took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Then we'll just have to be careful." Emily stepped forward. "I'll come with you again." Thomas hesitated. "It may be more dangerous this time." "We'll be okay," Holly insisted, determination burning in her eyes. "We have to do this." Thomas nodded slowly, respect evident in his gaze. "Very well, be vigilant, and trust in the strength within you." Holly and Emily left the chamber once more, setting their sights on the next challenge. As they climbed the winding staircase toward the attic, Holly couldn't help but feel a newfound sense of purpose and courage. She was no longer just a victim of circumstance, she was a fighter, ready to reclaim her family's legacy from the darkness that had consumed it for too long. With each step, the air grew colder and the shadows deeper. But Holly's resolve did not waver. She had faced Elizabeth once and survived. Now, she would continue the fight for herself and for all the souls longing for freedom. Reaching the top of the staircase, they stood before a heavy, dust-covered door. Holly grasped the handle, feeling a pulse of cold seep into her palm. She looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. "Ready?" Holly asked, her voice steady. "Ready," Emily replied. Holly pushed the door open, and together they stepped into the darkness beyond, prepared to face whatever awaited them in the shadows of Arreton Manor. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.